Hi, welcome to Tole Town for October 2022. I'm Sandy LaFleur and I'm going to be showing you how to paint this design. It's called All Dressed Up. If you need supplies, surfaces, anything like that, you can find that on my website, www.justfinedesigns.com, under the Tole Town heading. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to decoupage some tissue paper to our plaque. And I found this pretty cool. I call it postcard background tissue paper. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tear a piece that's big enough to cover my little coffin plaque. And then I'm going to get out my decoupage medium and an old flat brush that I don't mind getting decoupage in. I use decoupage medium a lot, so I keep it in this little stainless steel jar. So let's see if we can find a brush that I haven't totally destroyed with decoupage medium. There we go. So this is tissue paper, and it's thin. You do not need to apply a lot of decoupage medium to get this to stick. So I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm just going to brush on a little bit of decoupage medium, and then I'm going to put my tissue paper down and smooth that out there. So I'm just going to work small sections at a time, applying this tissue paper to this plaque. And all this is going to do is it's going to give me an interesting background to work on. And I just love having interest in my background. I don't want it to be so interesting that it takes away from the actual design, but it needs to have a little bit of interest. And this just gave me the right amount of interest for this piece. And it's probably going to give me the right amount of interest on a lot of pieces because I'm really liking it. So you just continue to apply sections of decoupage medium and then smoothing that tissue paper down with your hand. Excuse me. And this is just, I don't know, I just found this and fell in love with it, so I bought a bunch of it to put on my website, and I'm sure you'll be seeing lots of it in the future. So almost done here. This tissue is kind of thin, and so I don't feel the need to put a coat of decoupage on top of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how I remove the excess around the edges. Alright, so my decoupage medium is dry, so I'm going to remove this excess tissue paper from the sides of my plaque, and I like to do that with an emery board. You can use a nail file, you can use a sanding block, whatever it is you have handy. But you just want to go around the edges and just file off this excess tissue paper. It doesn't take much to get it gone. Luckily, there are no curves. All straight angles, so that makes it really easy. And okay, I think we got it. So there we go. Nice clean edges for us to work on. The next thing you want to do is you want to apply the pattern for the basic design. No details. So I am going to do that. And let's see, I need my darker graphite paper. And I like to use this erasable gel pen to apply my patterns because it is a colored pen, so I can see where I've traced. And that way if I get interrupted by a phone call or a husband, I always know what I've traced already and what needs to be traced. So let's move this down a little bit. Get that hat on there. And our head. And then when I'm done, if I need to trace again, all I need to do is hit this tracing with my hair dryer or my heat gun, and the ink disappears. So I can use it again. This really comes in handy when you're prepping several of your pieces, as I do for conventions. And I'm just going to go right through that handle. So I'm not going to put the pattern on for the hands or the bag right now, because I just want to deal with the pumpkin part of my guy. So I'm just going to go right through his hand there. And here I'm going to come and go right through the hand, and I'm just going to kind of guess on this shape right here. It really won't matter because it's going to be behind the bag. But I want to go through that because I just want to paint the pumpkin as itself without having to go around anything. It's just easier for me. So let's get some legs on. See that nice green ink? I don't know if you can or not. And then his shoes. There we go. Pattern applied. All right, so patterns applied. We're going to come in, and the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to float some shading on the background all the way around our little pumpkin guy and around the outside edges. And we're going to do that with burnt umber. So blend it out really well. You don't want it to be like a thick burnt umber line. You just want it to be a float, a nice soft float. And this just really looks good on this paper. So just go all the way around your design. Now, once we put our bag on, we'll come back and we'll float some shading around the bag. But for right now, we're just going to pretend the bag does not exist. I'm just going to go around all these little design elements. And in case you're wondering, what I'm dipping my brush in here is Winsor Newton Acrylic Flow Improver, and I use this on everything I paint. It helps me to do nice soft floats. Liner work goes really simple. So all it is it's like an extender, but it doesn't get a build-up. You know, you can use it as often as you want or not want. But like I said, I use it on everything. And what it is I use it in place of clear water, where I would normally load my brush with clear water to do a shade. I use the Flow Improver in place of the clear water. Everything else stays the same. You corner load, blend, blot, all those things stay the same. You just use the Flow Improver in place of your clear water. And I have been using this for years and years and years. And if you're interested, of course, here we go. I sell it on my website. You can get it in pre-mixed form, so you can give it a try. A 2-ounce bottle of pre-mixed, or you can get it in the concentrated form, so you can make your own 2-ounce bottle. But I always give this out in my classes to all my students so they can try it. So if you have trouble, where I used to live in California, it was hot and dry, so my floats would dry out really fast and I couldn't work with them or play with them a whole lot. So the flow improver just helped me be able to play with them and pity pat them into place. Here again, I didn't put the arms on. We'll come back and shade around the arms later after we put them on. So for right now, just to make it easy, just float shading in those areas that eventually are going to have body parts or bags. All right, almost there. Okay. And what this is going to do is going to pop our guy off the background a little bit. And I do like to do this usually before I paint something in, because I don't have to worry about it if I get it on the area of the design that's going to be painted, because it'll get covered up. All right, he's looking good already. Okay, all right, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a little bit larger flat brush. This was a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to switch over to let me see here. This is a 3/4 inch, and this is what I'm going to use to float this burnt umber around the outside edges, just because I want it to be a little bit larger float. So we'll just go all the way around the whole piece. Guess I could hum and entertain you that way. I go back and forth whether I should just tell you what I'm going to do, show you a little bit, and then stop recording. But you know what? If you want to fast forward through this part because you know what I'm doing, that's your choice. I'm going to give it to you all the way. All right, there we go. It looks cool already, and that just happens to just make this background tissue stand out a little bit more too. I don't know if you can tell or not, but I really like this background tissue. All right, so we are going to do some stenciling on the background, and we're going to use our Punchinello. And if you haven't used Punchinello before, what it is it's what's left over after sequins are punched out of this metallic ribbon. And I really enjoy using this as something else to add interest to my background. So what I'm going to do, and you can see it here, is I'm going to stencil some random clusters of dots. It's not completely covering the thing. It's just here and there with burnt umber. And then I'm going to come back and also stencil some warm white dots here and there, just to, again, add more interest to our background. So let's get our stencil brush and our Punchinello, and go to town. And I'm just going to add some here. And there's no right or wrong place to put it. You can look at the picture if you want to try to put it where I put it. And because this isn't based in, if you get into the design area, that's all right. Okay, let's get a little bit more. I want a little bit down in this corner. And then I want some over here. So I've got 5 spots. 2, 3. I always like to make it an odd number of spots. So now I need to get out some warm white so I can do the same thing, maybe not quite as much, with some warm white. Still using that Punchinello as my stencil. And it's not going to show up a whole lot, but it's going to show up a little. And that's all I wanted to do, is I want to break up the brown in this background a little bit. I didn't have enough white on there. There, that's better. Let's get some over here. And you notice I'm going right on top of my brown too. Looks like I'm going to add more than I thought. And let's get some in here. And see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get a little bit over there just to make it 5. There we go. Now you can put your Punchinello away and wash out your stencil brush. And we are going to work on the pumpkin parts next. So we'll be back and we'll work on those. All right, you're going to need some burnt orange. And what we're going to do is we're going to base in his little pumpkin head and his little pumpkin body with some burnt orange. And I'll get a little closer for you. Okay. 1 coat should do. I don't add water to my base coats, because if I add water, that just means I have to base it a couple of times to get coverage. But you only need 1 coat if you don't add water. And it's perfectly okay if some of this background tissue shows through. That's easy to say. Okay. Head done. Just kind of unrounded him right there. Let's change it. All right, and let's get his body going. Okay. As usual, I use Deco Art paints. I just love the colors they have. And we do use a couple of their newer colors on this piece. But you're perfectly welcome to substitute colors as you need. Okay, slowly but surely getting this pumpkin body based in. And again, you have this bag over here that's going to cover up part of this. So if the shape isn't exactly right, it'll be okay. All right, there we go. So let's dry this, and then we'll put the pattern on just for the sections of the pumpkin, not the detail pattern of his face or anything yet. So I'm going to dry this, and I'll be back. Okay, so as you can see, I put the pattern on for just the sections. Those are actually called flutes. And we're going to get out a brush that we like to dry brush with. As usual, I like to use the Langnickel Short Round Sable brush, and I just love it for dry brushing. When you initially buy it, it's a little bit pointier than what you'll see me use for dry brushing, but that's because I've worn down the tip, and this is right about where I really like it to be for dry brushing. So we are going to dry brush some highlighting in each section with Moon Yellow. And so dry brushing, no water in your brush, okay? I like to, let's do this. I like to pick up some Moon Yellow on my brush, and then I like to kind of rub it around on my palette. I go in circular motions, going back one way and then the other. And what I'm doing is I'm working that paint into the bristles a little bit, okay? And then I like to go and wipe it off on my towel. You can see I've dry brushed several colors with this towel. And then I go to this part of my hand, and I start scrubbing it around in a circle on my hand. And when I initially hit my hand, it feels pretty cold. But as I scrub it around, it loses its coolness. And once it loses its coolness, that's a pretty good indicator that you've taken enough paint out of your brush that you can go to your piece. So I'm going to dry brush through the center of each of these sections with this Moon Yellow. And the wider the section, of course, the wider the dry brush is going to be. He's starting to look good already. As I run out of paint, then I go through all the steps again of loading and rubbing it on my palette, wiping it off on my towel. See, I could have taken a little bit more paint out of that one, but I think it'll be just fine. We can always work with what we have. And this is a pretty wide section, so this dry brush is going to be pretty wide. Now, there are occasions when I come in and dry brush brighter highlighting, so right away, and so I would not wash my brush out. I would just pick up the lighter paint and make a lighter value of my highlight color. But for this time, we're going to wash our brushes out now. All right, so what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to float some highlighting on the outside edges of each of these sections. And I'm going to do that with Moon Yellow also. So just a nice side load float, blend it out really well. And I'll warn you ahead of time, it goes on bright, but it tones down as it dries. So I like to start on the outside edge and just float that highlight on those outside edges of this pumpkin section. And now it's easier if I turn this over. I'm not really trying to make you dizzy. I just want to make it easy on me, right? Because it is all about me. Okay. So the head is done. And let's go in and do the body in the same way. I start on the outside edge and work my way in towards the center so I don't wipe out any floats. And here again, I can get into areas that haven't been base coated yet, so that makes it kind of nice and easy. Right. Halfway done with the body. Highlights, not the body. Whole. And again, this is going to be covered with the bag, but little pieces of it poke out. So we want to make sure we do the highlighting and shading on them. Last one. And this is my little assistant. I haven't named her yet. But she likes to tell you what colors you're going to be using and where you can find things. So enjoy her little quips. All right. So I want to dry this really quick. Doesn't take much to dry. And I'm going to do my first layer of shading. And that's going to be with Country Red. I always, on my pumpkins, my first layer of shading is almost always a red. So blend it out. And the first places I'm going to shade are on the sections next to the highlights. So I'm going to come down this side. And we might as well go ahead and do these guys while we're on this side. And turn it over and we'll do the other sections. And one more section, but we have other shading we do with this color. We are going to shade in the top and the bottom of each section with Country Red. And we're not going to do just a straight float like across his head here or along the bottom. We're going to treat each section as its own little area that needs to be shaded. So I'm going to start down the side edge a little bit with my float. And then come and kind of walk this color out into the pumpkin section just to make it, give it more roundness, more dimension. And the same thing in the center section. And yes, it goes on top of some of the highlights you just did. That's all right. And then we'll go on this one. Same thing, start a little bit down the side edge and then walk that color down a little bit. I'm going to do the very same thing in the bottom. So I'm starting up a little bit and coming down into that V area and walking that color up. And one more section on the head, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the sections along the bottom. And that just gives the pumpkin a little bit more shape, more roundness. He's a chunky little pumpkin. think he's already had his fair share of Halloween candy. Okay, bottom done. Let's work on this top under the collar. And let's get this guy 2 more sections. Okay, so now that you know where the shading goes, we're going to come back and shade in the exact same places again, but we're going to do it with burnt umber this time. So side load float of burnt umber, very well blended out. You don't want it to be a harsh line of burnt umber. You want it to be a nice soft float of burnt umber. So again, I'm going to start here. And you may say, well, why didn't you just float with burnt umber to begin with? And I'll tell you, it's because I wanted that red behind that burnt umber. And if you like to mop your floats, this would be a good place to do it, just to soften them up a little bit. Let's get these guys. And one more here. Okay, and now we're going to go back and float this shading in the tops and the bottoms of each section. Just like we did with the country red, we're going to do it with this burnt umber. Okay, let's go ahead and do the bottom. And just take your time. It doesn't have to go real fast. Nice, soft little floats. And I just think it makes the pumpkin look just a little bit better. Obviously, I'm not going for a realistic pumpkin, but this adds a little bit more depth to the pumpkin. Makes it a little more believable that it's a pumpkin that has sections and is round. And let's do the top. I hope you don't mind silence, because I just don't have a whole lot to talk about. Except that I love Halloween. Actually, I love fall. And I need to paint more fall things. I used to paint fall all the time. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to come back and we want to add a little bit brighter highlight to this. And we're going to do that with some warm white and a dry brush. So get out your dry brush. And let's add a little pop of a brighter highlight in the tops of these sections. And that again adds to the idea that this is a more dimensional piece, more dimensional pumpkin. Okay, cool. There we go. So now what we want to do is we want to apply the pattern for his face and for his arms and hands and for that treat bag. So I'm going to do that and I'll be back. All right, so the face, the hands, the arms, and the treat bag are on. So now what I want to do is I want to come in and float some shading. I want to do it first around the outside of this arm and hand and treat bag. So I'm doing this on the background around those. And some more. I also want to do around the bottom of this hand on the pumpkin. I'll go next to this handle. I'm basically shading on the background and on the pumpkin to set this treat bag on top. Doesn't have to be perfect, obviously. And let's go around this hand on top of the pumpkin. And then around the hand and the arm where it's on top of the background. I'm going to start at his neck here and just float around that hand. And I forgot this guy has a little thumb, so I'll just add it right there. Not very well, but I did it. Okay, so now let's work on his face a little bit, and I'll get a little closer for you. We are going to dry brush some cheeks on him with, I'm just going to use Country Red and Warm White. And since I just used my dry brush, I'm going to scrub it out on my towel a little bit to dry it a little bit more. So I'm going to pick up Warm White on my dry brush, and then I'm going to pick up a little Country Red and make a little pink. I could have drug in another color, but I figured we could make a little pink with our white and our red. And I'm just going to dry brush some cheeks right on the ends of his mouth here. So just nice little pinky cheeks. Make them kind of big. You want to be able to see them. Okay, so he has little cheeks. We're going to paint in the eyes completely with Warm White. And my Warm White is almost gone, so I'm going to add a little bit more to my palette. And let's get a little, I'm going to use a liner brush just because I have a little bit more control on the shape. So completely base in these eyes. One coat will do. As long as you didn't add any water to your paint. And if you have trouble painting in circles, what I can say is you just need to practice a little bit. So you're sitting around, not doing anything, or waiting for something to dry. Practice painting circles. All right. So we're going to paint the nose, and we're going to line the mouth with lamp black. Let's get out some lamp black. This little nose is just a little smidgen of a crescent. I kind of gave it a little look of a comma stroke almost. It's just a teeny tiny little nose. And then we have a straight line for his mouth. And I'm going to add some little X's. I think I want to get a little bit smaller liner brush for that. This is a 1. I'm just going to go through and put some little X's along here. And what I'm really going to look for is to make this to look like barbed wire. So then I'm going to come back, and right in the center of those X's, I'm going to add just a little curved stroke to be like that middle of the barbed wire that twists around. All right. So now we can paint in the iris on his eye with turquoise blue. And that's just, if you need to put the pattern on, you can. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. But here again, it's good to practice those circles so you can do this without putting a pattern on. And another hint is when you do paint circles, try to start smaller than what you eventually want to end up, because somehow they always manage to become a little bigger than you plan. So this one started out small, and I have to make it a little bigger. Maybe even a little more. And I think that might need to be just a hair bigger. Always easier to make them bigger. All right. So we are going to line a shadow. I don't know. I think you can see it here. Yes. We're going to line a shadow above each eye, under the nose, and under the mouth with thinned burnt umber. So just your liner brush that you were just using. Just thin down some burnt umber. And we're just going to line a shadow above the eye, just so it's not sitting on top, but it's more sunk into his head a little bit. So that's there. A little bit of a shadow under his nose. And then we want to go through and line a shadow under his mouth. Now we need to highlight this iris. I know, we're going a little far here. So I'm just going to take my liner brush and pick up some turquoise blue and a little warm white, just to make a lighter value of turquoise blue. And I'm going to line this light color in the top left. It looks kind of goofy right now, of each of the irises. And then we're going to get a new color out. We are going to get out True Blue. You only need a dot. And we're going to line some shading in the iris. And that's going to go in the lower right with the True Blue. And there I just made my eye a little bigger, even though I didn't need to. But it'll work. Okay. I'm going to come and add this there. Blend that a little bit better. All right, we need those eyes to dry. So I'm going to dry those really quick. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flat brush and I'm going to do a very, very soft float of lamp black inside the top of each of these eyes. So just a nice soft float of lamp black. And that just kind of puts those eyes back into his head also. And he still looks kind of weird because he doesn't have his pupil yet. So now we can give him some pupils. And those are just with lamp black. And they're little ovals. They're not little circles. So a little pupil. And then this one is a little up here. A little goofy. All right. So we are going to give him some eyebrows, and I'm going to do that by picking up some burnt umber on my liner brush and a little bit of lamp black. So it's kind of a browny black. And I'm going to just stroke on a couple eyebrows with that lamp black burnt umber mix. And then I want to also very thinly outline the lower edge of the eyes. So from where you did that shadow above his eye, you want to just very lightly outline that lower edge of the eye. Finish it off. So we are going to line a highlight on his mouth, and that's going to be done with turquoise blue plus warm white. Probably more warm white than turquoise blue. Your little liner brush. And what I want to do is I want to go through first and just line a little highlight on that horizontal line that makes his mouth. And then I'm going to line a highlight on those little, what I want to call them, knots, where the barbed wire spikes come out of. All right. So there, we need to add a little warm white highlight in the top of each pupil. That makes his eyes look better. And now on his body, what I want to do is I want to line these little scrolls. And that's going to be done with thinned moon yellow. So I'm going to look for my, there it is, my littlest liner. This is a 2-aught. So if you have a 10-aught or something, you want to thin down your moon yellow. And there's no right or wrong place to put these. Just add some little swirls. Just to dress up his body a little bit. If you want to make them bigger, you can. Completely up to you. And sometimes I have good luck lining them all in one little piece, but usually what I have to do is line part of it and then come back and line the rest. But we're just adding little bits of interest. If you stay up on your tip, you should be able to line the whole swirl. And sometimes there's part of a swirl that comes off the edge. Look here under his hand, I'm going to put part of a swirl. I'm not going to do anything because the bag is going to cover that. So just random swirls. I'm not taking my time, so I'm having a little bit of an issue here. They turn out so much better if I take my time. And I think that's enough for now. All right, so we're going to call this body and his face done. So it's time to work on his hat. And I can just now see a place I forgot to float some shading with that burnt umber on the background. So I'm going to do that real quick. Inside this little curly cue, it needs to be shaded. All right, that's better. So the hat is based in black forest green. I didn't want to do a black hat. Everybody does a black hat. I wanted it to be a little different. So I'm going to base in my hat with black forest green. Again, one coat will do. So it shouldn't take too terrible long to get this based in. And it looks a little splotchy, but it's really okay. Got some stuff that goes on top of it. And let's get our hat brim done. All right. Almost done. Let's get over here on this side. Almost there. I actually think it just started raining outside. This is always a good thing. Here anyway. All right. So there we have a Black Forest hat. I'm going to let this dry and then we'll be back and start doing our details on the hat. All right, the hat is all based in with Black Forest green, and notice it's not opaque. Stuff goes on top of it, so we don't need it to be completely solid. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to dry brush some highlighting with Irish moss. So get out a little Irish moss in your dry brush, and let's dry brush some highlighting. It's basically going to go all over the hat. You want to get in this front brim area. And it's okay if you go past where the pattern is. It's all right. It'll be okay. I'm going to go inside where the hat turns behind the head. I'm going to load my brush a little bit more. And I'm going to work on the top of this hat. And as usual, it gets kind of wider where the hat is wider. And then it's going to come down and around this curl in the tip of the hat. Alrighty. So we got our nice highlighted dry brushed in there. So I'm going to wash out my dry brush. I am going to come back and do a little bit lighter highlighting, but we want to do the shading first. And the shading is going to be done with floats of lamp black. Just nice, well blended out lamp black. So I am going to float across this top edge of the hat brim. You can bring that all the way down to the point. And as long as you're there, you might as well turn the corner and do this lower edge of the part that goes around the back of his head. And I got a little bit on his face, so I'll need to take that off. And I threw some brushes on the floor, and it'll be okay. Stuff like that happens to me all the time. And I'm going to go down, I'm going to go across the top of the hat band. This is not a wide float. So hat, not the hat band, the hat brim, I'm sorry. Mouth isn't working. And again, I'm going to take this down around the bottom here. And you can kind of round those corners a little bit by walking that color out. So while we let that dry, let's go on the top of the hat above the hat band. Again, you want to round those corners a little bit. And let's pop over here to the curl and do the bottom of the curl. I'm going to go ahead and soften that a little bit. I think we can go back to our hat brim. And now I'm going to float inside the hat next to the head. And I'm going to walk that corner out and round it up or down or however. You want to also walk the corner in the top too. Let's go up here to the top of the hat. I'm going to start at the top and just pull this float down the outside edge. And let's see. Let's go around the back side of this curl so we get that in there nice. Let's set in the front edge of the brim. We're just going to float up, color up against the hat brim. Now the hat's starting to come alive. And the same thing on this side. You can make your hat brim go any shape you want if you've lost your pattern. At least that's what I'm doing. And let's see, just a couple more places with this shading. I'm going to turn this over. There's just a little bit right here. Then I'm going to come around that curl. All the way. There's a little point we need to get in. All right. Looking pretty good. Now we are going to come back with a float of Irish moss and just highlight the lower edge of the hat brim. So back to our Irish moss. And I'm just going to float across this top front edge of the hat brim just to have it stand out a little bit more. Right? And then there's one other place I want to float a highlight of Irish moss, and that's going to be inside this curl. So let's just Start about halfway up on one side and bring this highlight all the way to the tip here. We just want to make that curl stand out a little bit more. So I'm gonna, there. I think that looks pretty good. And now you want to get out your little liner brush. I'm using the 2-aught because I want a really thin line. And I'm just going to thin down some Irish moss. And I want to line this front brim, the edge of it, with a very thin line of Irish moss, just to kind of finish it off. So stay up on the tip of your liner brush and just add that line of Irish moss to give that hat brim just a more definite edge. All right, that looks good. So we're going to move to our hat band. We want to go ahead and base it in Joyful Pink, which is a newer color. So if you don't have Joyful Pink, you could use Royal Fuchsia or any other pink that you just like. And again, it's not going to have to be opaque. Just a nice pink hat band, because this bright pink is a great Halloween color. Okay. While we let that dry, we are going to go ahead and paint in the arms and the hands. And those are done with burnt umber. Might as well get a few things based in while we let things dry. Now I wanted the arms and the hands to kind of look like they were the vine that the pumpkins are attached to. So, arms aren't real big. It's not buff. We'll just give him a coat of burnt umber. Don't forget the little thumb. And let's get the other arm. And a little thumb. And got a little big, but it'll be okay. We'll clean it up, make it not so big. Yeah, it doesn't look bad. It'll be just fine. So just a coat there. You know, we have that Irish moss out. Let's go ahead and paint his legs. As long as we got color, fresh color out here, and we're letting things dry. So give his legs a coat of Irish moss. little stick legs. If you want to make them fatter, you can. And we'll do the top of his shoes with burnt umber, as long as we're there. Get a few things basted in. And lamp black, let's get in our lamp black and paint the soles of those shoes. Just nice little black rectangles. All right, so let's see, hatband, almost dry. As long as we're at it, let's get out some Perfect Perry and we'll base in this collar. We're going to be using Perfect Perry on the hatband, so we would have gotten it out pretty quick anyway. And again, it does not have to be opaque. All right, got us a nice collar. So the next thing I want to do is, excuse me, I'm still working on that hatband. So I want to dry brush some highlighting on the hatbands. So let's dry brush some highlighting with warm white on that hatband. Just kind of lighten up the center a little bit. Oh, you know what? As long as we're dry brushing with warm white, let's go back and add a little bit brighter highlight to our hat with Irish Moss plus warm white. Just a little bit lighter value of Irish Moss. And I'm going to do this just across this front edge of this hatband. And I want to do it inside this curl. And up here in the top of the hat. And then a little bit down here. Just to brighten that hat up a little bit. Okay, glad I didn't forget that. Now we have stripes on our hatband, and those are done with the Perfect Perry. So just a liner brush give yourself a few stripes. I always like to start in the middle. That way I can go straight up and down. And then as I move away from the middle, I kind of curve my stripes, just to give the hat band a little bit more shape. And you can put as many or as few stripes as you want. All right, just wipe that brush out. You don't have to rinse it out, and pick up some warm white. And let's go ahead and line a highlight through the center of those purple stripes. So I'm just going to go right in line with that dry brush highlighting that I did. Just going to highlight those stripes a little bit. All right, a new color we need to get out is red violet. And we're going to float shading on our hat band. It's going to go on both sides and across the bottom. We're not going to touch the top. And that's going to be a float of red violet. Red violet's kind of transparent, but it's such a pretty color. So I'm going to come down the side, right over those highlights I did. And I'm going to go across the bottom. Again, walking the little corners out. And I'm going to go up this side. And then what I want to do is I want to add these little wrinkles across here. So the easy way to do that is just to continue with your side lobe float. But you get up on your chisel edge of your flat brush and you just kind of pull and drag across to add some wrinkles. So just side load with red violet and then get up on your chisel edge and just pull across to add some wrinkles coming in from the side edges. Easy peasy. All right, so now we can go back to the arms. We are going to float and line some highlighting on the arms and hands with Irish moss. So I'm going to take my liner brush and some thinned Irish moss, and I'm going to think like how the stem and stuff on a pumpkin is. It's kind of got ridges. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line some Irish moss ridges on there. I also want to line a little ridge or two on the thumb and on the hand. I'm going to do that too. These are going to be squiggly, thin, fat, you know, just think like ridges. I'll go over here to this guy. He's skinnier, so he doesn't get quite as much on his arm. Do a little bit on the thumb and the hand. All right, took a little break, ate some lunch, put a new towel behind here, a new one to get dirty. Anyway, we are going to go back to working on the arms and hands. And what we're going to do is we're going to float some highlighting across the top of the arm, the hand, and the thumb with Irish moss. So let's get a little highlight. Turns a little greener. Not so brown, just a little bit on the top of the thumb and then across the top of the hand. Makes it look a little more viney. So I'm going to go across the top of this arm, across the top of the hand, and across the top of the thumb with that. right. So then the next thing we want to do is we want to line some shading in between these ridges with thinned burnt umber. So liner brush and burnt umber, just kind of, I think we're going to need to add just a touch of lamp black to that burnt umber to darken it up a little bit. So we're going to line some shading in between these lighter ridges with that mix of burnt umber and lamp black. And it's just as squiggly as the other ones were. And if it doesn't fill up that whole space, that's all right. It'll be perfectly fine. Nothing too technical about this. Okay, looking more ridgy. We want to dry that. And then we're going to come back and we're going to float some shading on the arms and hands with that burnt umber lamp black mix. Just a little bit deeper. It's almost like a soft black. And if you wanted to pull soft black and do it that way, that'd be good too. But I just thought rather than pull in another color, we could just mix the brush mix a little bit of that. So burnt umber, lamp black, I'm going to go on the bottom edge of the arm where it's right next to the pumpkin, where it butts up against the collar. And then I'm going to go on the thumb next to the hand. And then I'm going to go in the bottom of the hand. Just a few places. All right. Now to sell the fact that these are vines even a little bit more, I'm going to take my liner brush and some Irish moss, and I'm going to paint a few little leaves here and there. So I had a couple come off this hand, just quick little leaves. Nothing too fancy. And then I drug one up here. And we'll get a couple on this other hand, or by this other hand. If you want to put more, you can. Completely up to you. And so we're going to line a highlight on what we consider to be the, no, let's go ahead and line the stems and the little curlicues first. And then we'll line a highlight. So those are going to be done with thinned black forest green. So each of these little leaves gets a stem. And then I wanted to add some little curlicues. Little vine coming off of there. You know how they do. Let's start at the wrong end here. All right, now we're going to line a highlight because we can go ahead and line highlights on the leaves and on the stems. And we're going to do that with moon yellow. So pick a side that you want to be the top of this leaf and just line a little highlight. And then here and there on the vine, add a couple of touches of moon yellow. Not too much. Kind of makes it so you can see them a little better. All right, so we're going to call those arms and hands done. And now we're going to come to the collar. Now the collar, If you want to put the pattern on with the tracing, you can, or you can just take a chalk pencil and sketch it on. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to think like a ribbon candy. So I'm going to just come through here and add this ruffly line in here. So you see, you don't really need to put it on with the pattern. It's probably easier to do it just freehand like that. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to dry brush highlighting on the top of the collar here, the part that goes around his neck, with warm white. And we're going to go from the top of each ruffle, so the rounded curved top of each ruffle. And we're going to take that straight back to the neck. So I'm going to go with a little bit smaller dry brush. This is a 10. And I'm just going to dry brush the top of that ruffle. So this is more of just giving it the illusion that there's a ruffled collar around there. It's working already. So we're going to float shading with Diox Purple in the top and the bottom of each of these curves. So get out a little Diox Purple, and I'll probably go through and float in the bottom of each one and then come back and float in the top. So wherever there's a curve, you want to add a little like C-stroke float. To form the inside of that ruffle. And I know on the original, I have more ruffles. I just noticed that. But it'll be okay. All right. And while we let that bottom dry, we can go ahead and float up the sides, under his chin, and then down the other side. And just bounce around on this a little bit. It really doesn't take too long to make this look like a ruffled collar. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the inside of the curves on the top. Easy peasy. It's already looking like a ruffled collar. I'm also going to dry this real quick, because what I want to do is I want to run a float of Diox Purple along this bottom edge here, just to kind of blend it into the collar a little bit more. Right along this bottom edge, you want to deepen that with a float. Now, remember how we did the wrinkles on the hat band? We're going to use that same technique to apply the, what do I want to call those? Gathers from the neck out. So I'm just going to corner load, side load my flat brush with Diox Purple. I'm going to start at the neck. I'm just going to pull some wrinkles down into these bottom ruffles. Much easier than a back-to-back float, let me tell you. All right, we're getting there. Now the top, what I want to do with the top edge of each ruffle is I want to line it and brighten it, kind of add a highlight with some thin warm white and my liner brush. And I'm not going to do it to the bottom. I'm just going to do it to the ruffles that curve up as I'm pointing and making the motions for curving up that you can't see. So I'm going to just start about halfway down and stop before I get completely into the bottom of that ruffle. All right. And you were probably afraid of this ruffle collar. It's really simple because I don't do hard. And I'm going to pretend there's one over there. And I'm going to also kind of to direct these gathers a little bit more along this top edge. I'm just going to line a few brighter little highlights just to reinforce the idea that they're gathers. Right? And now just to kind of tie the different colors together, we use turquoise blue in his eyes, and so I want to use it a couple other places on this piece. And so one of those places is I'm going to come back with a side load float of turquoise blue, and I'm just going to touch a little bit of this in the top of the curves. It'll kind of give this collar a little kind of a look of iridescence a little. And I also want to just hit it here and there on the ruffle, the top of the ruffles. Doesn't have to go everywhere. And I also did put it in the bottom a little bit. And I think that just kind of adds some more interest. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to come back and I want to deepen this shading under his chin just a little bit with another float of Diox Purple. So I'm going to start on his shoulder a little bit. And I'm going to come back and just deepen that area right under his chin. So a little bit down on his shoulder and then down there. All right, I'm going to call that collar done. All right, as long as we have that turquoise blue on our palette and it's still wet, let's go ahead and base in his little pant legs. So they're just turquoise blue. Probably should get a smaller brush, but I'm a little lazy. Cute little pant legs, which I accidentally painted onto his legs. well. That's why we have water, right? Okay, we are going to move on to that candy bag. And we're going to bring in a completely different color. We're going to bring in bleach sand. I didn't want it to be white. And so I thought bleach sand was a good one. So go ahead and base in that candy bag. And it doesn't have to be opaque and it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It's a candy bag. And hopefully it's got lots of goodies in it. All right. Just a quick coat. We're going to also line that handle with bleach sand. And that's going to go right over probably the best part of your collar. All right, that looks good. So while we let that dry, let's go ahead and dry brush some highlighting on his legs with moon yellow. Might as well get that while we let stuff dry. Just a little bit of highlighting with moon yellow on those green legs. Okay, and then we can add the stripes to the legs, and there with lamp black. And you can put the pattern on, or you can just add some stripes. It's completely up to you. That's the advantage of having a video. You can stop and put patterns on, or just chalk pencil some stripes on there. But he just needs a few stripes. Obviously, they don't have to be perfect and they don't have to be the same size. If they did, I'd be in trouble. And one more. And then I'll make that one bigger. Okay. And as long as you have lamp black on your brush and you have that turquoise blue, go ahead and pick up some turquoise blue on that. And we'll just line a highlight on those soles. It's not quite bright enough, so I'll pick up a little more turquoise blue. There we go. And just line a quick highlight on those soles. All right, I think we can go back to our bag now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use drywall tape. It's a nice little piece of stuff you find at Home Depot, or you can buy it on my website. And I am going to stencil just to add some texture to this bag. And I think you can see it here. I didn't do everywhere. I just kind of hit and miss. And that's stenciled on with burnt umber. just a little bit. To get this drywall tape, I sell it on my website rather than you having to go to Home Depot and buy a whole big roll. I sell it 18-inch pieces, so it'll last you a long time. It's got a little bit of sticky on the back, so it stays in place when you're stenciling. So it's just another unique tool that I like to use to add interest to things. All right, we are going to dry brush some highlighting on our bag with warm white. And yes, it's just going to go right over some of that stenciling we just did, but that's all right. Just going to highlight up that center of that bag a little bit. And you could also line a highlight with warm white on the handle. It doesn't show up much, but at least you know it's there. We're going to float shading on the bag with burnt umber. And basically it's just going to go around the two sides and the bottom, and then on the handle where it connects to the bag and where it goes in his hand. So just a touch on the handle. Doesn't take much. And then I'm going to go down the side here. And just like with everything else, in this corner I'm going to walk it out a little bit. And let's just mop it. Right, now if that looks good enough to you, like it's a rumpled bag, then just leave it. But I wanted to make it a little bit more rumply, so I'm going to dry brush just a touch of burnt umber here and there, just to make the creases and the wrinkles a little more defined. Let's see, maybe, oops, a little too much, but it'll be okay. And then maybe a little here. Now once this is dry, you can come back, put the pattern on, and add the lettering and the little line of stitching across the top. If you do it now, it might gum up your Sharpie, so we'll come back and do that in a little bit. So let's go down to his pants. And we're going to dry brush some highlighting on those pants with warm white. So just a little bit of warm white. Just not going to take a lot. Get that straight here. And I'm just going to scrub a little bit of warm white through the center of those pants. And then while I have this warm white in my brush, I'm going to pick up a little burnt umber, and I'm going to dry brush a little bit of highlighting on the shoes with that burnt umber warm white. Killed two birds with one stone there. Now the pants have little stripes, and those are joyful pink. And we talk about putting touches of colors that we use in different spots on our piece. So this is where I'm going to drag in a little bit more joyful pink. So I'm just going to add some little stripes. They're just little thin pink stripes. Just to add some different interest to his pants. And now another color that we haven't used in a while, true blue. You only need a touch. If you can break open the true blue that's on your palette, that'd be great. So we're going to float shading on the pants. And that's going to be done with true blue. And basically it's going to go all the way around the whole pant. So I'm going to go first under the pumpkin, around the bag a little bit. And then I'm just going to come down the sides and across the bottom. There. We have one more little thing and those pants will be done. Those little pink stripes, they need to be highlighted. So hopefully you didn't put a whole ton of them on there. So just a little touch of warm white through the center of those stripes, just to act as a highlight. I know it's anal, but every little bit helps to make this guy cute. All right, so we can move down to his legs, which we have partly done already. And we are going to line a little bit of a highlight on the black sections of the stripes with, well, it says warm white, but I picked up a little turquoise blue. So I'll pick up some warm white and make a lighter, very light turquoise blue. I always like blue on black. So I'm just going to line just a touch of a highlight through the center of those black stripes. And then the next thing we need to do is, we have black forest green on our palette. We are going to float shading on his legs. And that's going to go top, bottom, and both sides. So it's a very thin float, not real wide. And that's with black forest green. And it goes across the black stripes too. So, well, you don't have to do it under because that's black already. So I guess you can just do down the sides because we have black and you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. So I lied. I don't do that too often. At least I try not to. All right. So those are shaded. All right, we can call the legs done. So we are going to float shading on our shoes with that burnt umber lamp black mix. So just brush mix some burnt umber and just a touch of lamp black. And I'm going to go first across the bottom of the shoe next to the sole. And then I'm going to go down the sides. I add some little shoestrings, and those are lined on with thin warm white. So I just did a couple of little loops. On the top of the shoe. Again, they don't have to be perfect. And then I just added a couple of straight lines to act like the laces. And then I wanted the laces someplace to go in. So the eyelets, I just took my liner brush and set down a little bit of lamp black to form the eyelets. Okay, so let's put the pattern on for our lettering here. We're going to put the pattern on for the lettering. We might as well get that done. We are almost done with this guy. All right. So just quick. It doesn't have to be fancy lettering. And if you want it to say something else, that's fine. Trick or treat, whatever. Okay. And now I'm going to take my Sharpie and make sure it works. And let's line that stitching across the top. And I think I want a broken stitch. And let's go ahead and do that lettering. You can use any permanent black marker pen that you have handy. Just make sure it's permanent. All right, that was easy. All right, so now the only thing we have left to do is this edge on here, and that's done with burnt umber. And then I also went in and deepened the shading on the background here and there. So we'll do that too. So this border is burnt umber, and I use a flat brush that I side load like I was going to float. I don't blend it out so much. I leave a lot of the paint in. And I just come along and kind of squiggle that loaded side of the brush along the edge. And that gives me a nice, interesting little border. I'm trying to throw my brushes on the floor again. And it's pretty quick. You can make it as squiggly as you want. I would keep it pretty thin. I wouldn't get too wide. And that just kind of finishes off the side edge a little bit. Doesn't leave you hanging. And you can see how quickly it goes. If you'd rather do it with black, you could do it with black, or you could do it with the burnt umber black mix. Whatever. You could even choose a bright color if you wanted to. Almost done already. All right, so I do want to go in and deepen the shading on the background in the areas that I consider to be V areas, just to pop this guy off the background a little bit more. So burnt umber shading, and probably the first place I'm going to go is in his crotch area. I want to deepen this a little bit. Just the crotch area, not necessarily down the legs or anything. And of course I'm going to go over here to the candy bag. I consider this little area right here to be a V area, so I'm going to deepen that a little bit. I'm going to go next to his head. That's definitely an area that needs to be a little bit deeper, and walking that color a little bit further out. And let's go next to this hat. We got this nice tiny little spot right here that could be deepened. I want to deepen inside this curl especially. And basically I'm just going to mirror what I just did on this side over on the other side. So I'm going to turn this guy over, and I'm going to deepen this little V area around a little ways. Maybe a little bit right here. I'm going to go in here and deepen this around his neck and head. It's okay to go over those leaves. It'll be okay. And maybe right here. Just wherever you look at it and you feel like, I want to drop the background further back behind him, so he pops out a little bit more. And we'll go up here. All right. Now if you wanted to, you could go in these corners here and deepen that too, which I might do. Since it's burnt umber on the border, I can go right over. Just dropping that background a little further back, but I'm not losing the background, which is great. It's still there to add some interest to my piece. But I do like deepening these corners a little bit. All right, let's back off a little bit so you can see. And so we are done. We're going to call this little guy all ready to go out trick-or-treating. So just add yourself a wire hanger. You can add some beads or bows or whatever. Maybe use raffia as the hanger. Whatever you want to do to add some interest to this guy, even some more. If you have a Halloween ribbon, that might work. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you again in the future. And I hope you have a great time painting this little guy.